What explains those moments when a market seems to work, yet still lands in the wrong place? In most cases, prices do a remarkable job of signaling scarcity, coordinating supply, and guiding decisions. But sometimes buyers and sellers act on what matters only to them, while real costs or real benefits fall somewhere else. This video, based on an excerpt of Chapter 4 from Invisible Hand, Visible Profit, discusses what market failure really means in plain terms, and who bears the real costs of those failures. A market failure does not mean a market crash, but rather an inability of the market to reach its natural equilibrium. The price mechanism, on its own, produces an outcome that is systematically inefficient. Too much of one product may get produced, too little of another, or something socially valuable may not be produced at all, because no private producer can capture enough value. These failures tend to come from a small set of recurring causes. Externalities, essential goods with no viable private market, information asymmetry between buyers and sellers, and price controls imposed through regulations. Many rules, compliance costs, and pricing pressures in business trace back to one of these sources. The most intuitive place to start is externalities, because they show how one decision can quietly affect someone outside the transaction. Externalities are easiest to understand through everyday life. A mother-to-be drinking alcohol creates harm for an unborn child who has no control over that choice, while healthy choices can create benefits for that same child. In both cases, one person acts, but someone else carries the consequence. Markets miss these effects because the buyer and seller have no financial reason to include them, and that sets up the difference between positive and negative externalities. Positive externalities are benefits that extend beyond the buyer and seller in a transaction. A business that trains its workforce builds skills workers carry into the labor market long after they leave. Other employers gain a more skilled labor pool without paying for the training. Basic research works the same way, creating value across industries and generations that one firm cannot fully capture. Rational actors responding to private returns instead of social returns yields investments that are lower than the true equilibrium. However, businesses must realize that positive externalities build brand trust and goodwill over time, which could be considered as indirect benefits to them. A steel mill that discharges pollutants into a river raises water treatment costs and imposes health costs on nearby communities, none of which appear in its production costs. Because price reflects private cost rather than full social cost, output ends up higher than what is socially efficient, and the difference is absorbed involuntarily by others. Since these social costs and risks are often hard to quantify, and worse, harder to justify, many companies rationally choose to ignore them. However, since these are borne by the society, they open the door to regulations from the government. Many regulations began as a response to damage that private markets did not correct on their own. Environmental rules, banking oversight, and food or drug regulation often emerge after fraud, pollution, unsafe practices, or other harmful spillovers become hard to ignore. Once those rules arrive, compliance adds costs, and those costs can shift prices higher and shrink supply. That is why regulated industries often move more slowly. And it also explains why some businesses try to get ahead of pressure before regulators force the issue. Companies that internalize costs before being forced to, and map where their externalities land, tend to gain more trust and avoid being caught off guard by regulators or the public. There is a practical decision that businesses have to make. When there are negative externalities, absorbing the real costs into their production can feel like a hit to profit in the short run. Positive externalities can strengthen trust and respectability of the company over time. Almost every industry creates spillovers in both directions. A pharmaceutical company may fund clinical trials for a drug that never reaches market, yet still add to scientific knowledge that future researchers can build on. A logistics company can push noise and wear and tear into residential neighborhoods, while a technology platform can create network externalities that spread beyond paying customers. Once a business maps these effects clearly, it becomes easier to anticipate regulatory pressure, reputational risk, and strategic openings before they arrive uninvited. Businesses that perform well over time are the ones that embrace the costs and benefits of these externalities correctly. They are the ones that gain social support, recognition, and brand loyalty by doing the right thing. Market failures occur when prices do not tell the full story. Some benefits spread without payment, some costs land on outsiders, and that pushes supply and price away from what would be socially efficient. The market equilibrium shows a completely different number than the real equilibrium. Over time, such gaps trigger regulations, which lead to even higher compliance costs for businesses. This can dramatically shift how an industry operates, and it can shrink profit margins. The practical takeaway is simple. Businesses that understand their externality profile early are better prepared for what the market and the wider world around it will do next. If you like learning about economics in an easy-to-apply manner, don't forget to get your copy of Invisible Hand, Visible Profit: The Simple Science Behind Smart Decisions as an ebook, paperback, or audiobook on Amazon, Apple Books, Google Play, Spotify, and other platforms.